It seems to be time to bin tobacco cigarettes for good, as e-cigarettes become the newest tool to help smokers quit. But are they too good to be true?
I definitely pick up a vape more times than I pick up a cigarette.
Let's face it, we might have a new generation of child vapers.
Let's find out. Across the UK, e-cigarettes are now being given out to people who smoke to help them quit and make England become smoke-free. But why and how is this supposed to be a good idea? Vaping has now been labelled as a healthy alternative to cigarettes by many, sensationalising the idea that e-cigarettes are good for you. But realistically, are they as good as they're being advertised? Or will they just be another huge issue that needs tackling in 10 years' time and banned, much like cigarettes are today? Lincoln had the third highest number of smokers in England in 2019, and as a county, Lincolnshire wasn't much better. Lincolnshire County Council set out to lower this number after pressure from the government as they announced that England will be smoke-free by 2030, and made councils responsible for getting their areas below a smoking prevalence of 5%.
Hi Roz, Georgie English is here waiting to speak to you about Lincolnshire reaching its smoke-free target and why the council supports e-cigarettes.
Obviously smoke-free, it's looking at about 5% or less smoking prevalence. Currently in Lincolnshire we're at 13.3%, so we've still got some way to go. It's going to be a challenge. We have a stop smoking service in Lincolnshire, One New Lincolnshire, and obviously they've got to be up for that challenge. We started looking at e-cigarettes some time ago, obviously because of all the evidence that was coming out about their efficacy around smoking cessation particularly. So back in October we launched a pilot with our stop smoking service, One New Lincolnshire, and now clients that come into the service are offered e-cigarettes.
One New Lincolnshire work with the council to help people quit smoking. They offer e-cigarettes as part of their stop smoking service with a 12-week plan where they give people an e-cigarette instead of them smoking real cigarettes. This, paired with one-to-one sessions with practitioners, is designed to get people off cigarettes completely and less reliant on nicotine in their daily lives. I'm here at the offices of One New Lincolnshire to see why they offer e-cigarettes as part of their stop smoking service and how they really work.
So across kind of different stop smoking services, we're always trying to keep up with the most popular stop smoking age to be able to help people in the best way. So across England, a lot of stop smoking services have introduced kind of nicotine containing e-cigarettes to help people quit smoking, and they are now recognised as the most popular way of quitting. The highest that we would supply to someone is a 1.6%, so a 16 milligram, and that would be someone that's come from being a very heavy smoker across to match that nicotine from cigarettes. But throughout the journey, the 12 weeks of using one of these devices, we can send them liquids that are of lower nicotine content, all the way down to the end of being a 6% or 0.6. So you've gone from being a 20 down to that 6 milligram, so that that nicotine addiction is almost completely gone, and they no longer need these products throughout the day.
So, what they offer is an e-cigarette with a starting liquid containing 16 milligrams of nicotine, which is the highest you can be given. Then each time you come back, they lower the amount of nicotine in your liquid like so, before the final week where you can see the progression made and decide to either stop altogether or stay at a low nicotine level. But how successful has the scheme been so far?
The feedback so far has been really positive. I think clients can be surprised that we offer it, but it's like a pleasantly surprised.
I went to speak to someone about why they made the transition from smoking cigarettes to now using a vape, and to see if they're happy with the choice they made and if it feels like a step in the right direction.
Good song. No specials. I would definitely feel healthier. 1,000,000% feel healthier. In a sense of when you smoke, I mean specifically for me, your lungs feel shallow. You don't feel normal until you stop smoking, then you realise what it's actually like. Your body just feels knackered, it just feels worn out and tired, but using the vapes and not really smoking, my lungs feel better. I don't feel 100% because I still use a vape, but they don't feel as shallow. I don't find myself getting out of breath as quickly. I feel like I can play football and other sports for at least a minute longer than I usually be able to.
The government, county councils and stop smoking services across the UK certainly believe in e-cigarettes as the way forward to a smoke-free nation. They say this is because of evidence showing that e-cigarettes are 95% less harmful than normal cigarettes.
So by transitioning from cigarettes to something that's regarded as 95% less harmful, that person has become smoke-free. You don't smoke an e-cigarette, there's no smoke involved, there's no burning, so you don't have that health impact from combustion. It's a different sort of device. And the nicotine is coming through a device that doesn't also contain kind of the thousands of harmful chemicals that are in cigarettes. So we can be guided by that up-to-date guidance and regulation that it is 95% less harmful.
But are they actually this much healthier? The idea of an e-cigarette being 95% less harmful comes from Public Health England, who did a landmark review back in 2015, telling us that e-cigarettes only carry a fraction of the risk of cigarettes. However, with such a bold claim comes a lot of doubters, with many researchers being left unsure on the accuracy of this number.
I think that most people would argue that that number is basically given just as an indicator to the general public about the fact that e-cigarettes are probably orders of magnitude safer than smoking. I don't think anybody would ever say that this kind of figure is very precise, because one of the key issues with the health impact of something like e-cigarettes compared with smoking is that most of the diseases that arise from smoking take a very long time to develop, and we don't have the data to look at actual health outcomes.
So where many researchers have an issue with the 95% statement is that we don't know much about the long-term effects that vaping has just yet. Smoking is seen as the #1 most preventable cause of death in the UK, but most of these deaths are being seen in people who have smoked for decades. E-cigarettes only came to Europe in 2005, meaning they've only been around for 18 years, so long-term health issues are still pretty uncertain. So what is it that makes cigarettes so bad then, that we need to invest hundreds of millions into services to get people off them each year? Well, cigarettes kill around 76,000 people each year. They can cause 12 types of cancers, with 70% of lung cancers being caused by smoking. They can also increase your risk of coronary heart disease, heart attacks, stroke, damaged blood vessels, pneumonia, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, erectile dysfunction, reduced fertility, an increase in recovery time after surgery, and blindness. But how healthier is vaping then?
The key difference, I think, is likely to be in cancers. So, as I said, it's quite well documented now that e-cigarettes are much less likely to be exposing people to cancer-causing chemicals. I think in terms of the respiratory impact, so what I was talking about, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, etc., there's some evidence to suggest that lung function might improve when you switch from smoking to using e-cigarettes. Some say it doesn't change at all. I would say, depending on the comparator, I'm sure that your respiratory function is improved if you're vapor compared with somebody who continues to smoke. But in the long run, again, because you don't have all these other things, all these other chemicals being transferred into your body, it's likely that it's less harmful. And there are some studies that have shown this to be the case, but it's a bit speculative at this stage.
So vaping is definitely healthier for you then, but that doesn't make it healthy. And some feel that sensationalising vaping as a good alternative isn't a very good look when it still causes so many issues and has the potential to cause many, many more that we just don't know about yet.
I think Public Health claims that it's 95% safer than smoking, but frankly I think time will tell. I remember I'm from the generation when smoking was deemed to be healthy and advised by doctors for various ailments, so that was then. This is now. Science is always changing, so who can say what the future is?
Just walking along Lincoln High Street, you can see so many shops that sell vaping products, from actual vape shops to supermarkets to the more unusual kind. Getting a hold of one of these has never been easier, even if that might not be a good thing.
In terms of e-cigarettes, they are a concern in terms of our younger population, and I think one of our recommendations would be that obviously if you are a smoker, then they are proving to be an effective means of helping you quit smoking. However, if you've never smoked, or if you are, a young person, you should certainly not be trying to use e-cigarettes.
With all these new shops selling vapes, it's no surprise that more people are trying them out who have never touched a cigarette before, including the younger generation. The bright colours, fruity flavours and ease of getting a hold of one, even when getting your phone repaired for example, is worryingly attractive to many people. But with vapes becoming increasingly more popular and cigarettes being phased out by the government in a very strong way, how does that make a smoker feel?
So I've been smoking for 55 years and I actually think that I'd be worse off if I quit smoking. Frankly, it's a legal product, so I don't care, basically, if they say it's antisocial. I think if you make something antisocial, you make the person not socially acceptable. I think actually the government needs to sit back and say, well, hang on a minute, smokers are people too. We've obviously got a situation where some people just don't want to quit. And is it really worth our time, our effort and public money to force those people into a state that we want them to be? You know, we're not a dictatorship, we're not told how we should live our lives, we choose.
One of the biggest concerns around vaping is how it's causing a whole new generation of nicotine addicts. Nicotine is comparable to alcohol and cocaine in terms of how the addiction affects you, with it sending dopamine to your brain to make you feel better momentarily, but leaving you chasing that same feeling constantly. The average cigarette has 12 milligrams of nicotine in it, with most vapes being at 20 milligrams, so both have a pretty high nicotine content that can lead to addiction. So, is turning to an e-cigarette after years of smoking really affecting people's addictions, or is it just taking them from one addictive product to another?
The idea that you're not actually smoking cigarettes anymore, mentally I think helps with breaking that barrier of a nicotine addiction. Like I said, obviously it's still there, as it always will be if you carry on smoking or using a vape, but when I stopped using cigarettes, it felt like that mental barrier of not having to smoke fags anymore was broken. Stopping the cigarettes altogether, I think, definitely gives you that sense of, well, I've done that. I know I'm still using something else, but that barrier is now starting to break.
One of the aims of stop smoking services giving out e-cigarettes is to get people to break that habit of needing nicotine throughout the day. So, if turning to vaping truly does make the barrier of quitting easier, then maybe it's a clever idea. But what does a health expert think about giving out e-cigarettes to smokers?
E-cigarettes are a toolkit or a tool as part of what's called harm reduction. So you may have heard about, for instance, somebody who's addicted to heroin is being offered methadone as one of the alternatives. So you have to acknowledge that some people will never be able to stop. Either they don't want to, or they don't, or they cannot stop because they're so addicted. If that's the case, then you have two options. One is to say, well, you're just going to have to die, I'm sorry. Or you offer them something else that may not be risk-free, but it has lower risk, rather than saying everybody has to stop using anything at all related to nicotine, say, because it's still feeding an addiction. You accept the fact that some people would not be able to stop smoking cigarettes without the help of something else that is still maintaining some form of addiction.
One thing that everyone seems to agree on is that e-cigarettes are great if you're looking to quit cigarettes. This is because they don't contain all the harmful chemicals and also make it much easier for you to quit long term. So, the message seems to be, if you don't already smoke cigarettes, don't begin to vape. But if you do still smoke, maybe try switching to e-cigarettes and seeing how it makes you feel, because it might just save your life.